and there is another vertex D to B and D to A. So there are six edges, 5 vertices and 6 edges. Further, you can note that all of these edges, these are non-directional. These are non-directional, non-directed. This is a non-directed graph. Non-directed graph because there is no direction. We are simply saying there is an edge from A to B, but we are not saying that the direction of edge is A to B. It can be A to B, B to A. It is both ways. Okay, so this is a non-directional graph. So we call this graph GVE. V comprises of 5 vertices A, B, C, D, E, and E comprises of 6 edges A, B, B, C, C, E, E, D, D, B, and D, A. And this graph we can show pictorially using this figure. Okay. Now this is the concept of directed and undirected graph. Graph can be directed or undirected, as I told you. In an undirected graph, edges are not associated with directions with them. If an edge exists between vertex A and B, then the vertex can be traversed from B to A also. So if a graph is undirected and we say there is an edge from A to B, this basically means there is an edge from B to A also. We can traverse the graph from A to B as well as B to A. Okay? In case of directed graph, we specify the direction. There is a direction associated with the edge. So if we specify there is an edge from A to B, this simply means there is a path from A to B, not necessarily from B to A. We need to specify if there is a path from B to A also. Okay, so you understand directed graph and undirected graph? Yes? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. आप लोग मुझे दिख नहीं रहे हो ना, तो I need a response from you people just to know that you are there. So in a directed graph, edges from an ordered pair. Edges represent a specific path from some vertex A to another vertex B. Nor A is called in such a case an initial node, while node B is called the terminal node. You can see here example of undirected graph and directed graph. The first one is an undirected graph which is not showing any direction, but the second one is showing a direction A to B. You can see that the edge is a directed edge A to B. There is another directed edge B to C. There is another directed edge C to E, E to D, B to D, and A to D. So everywhere direction is shown. So there is an edge from D to A, but there is no edge from A to D in the second example. Whereas in the first example, we say there is an edge from A to D and there is an edge from D to A. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, this is a graph terminology. We say path. We say there is a path. So a path can be defined as the sequence of nodes that are followed in order to reach some terminal node V from the initial node U. So starting from from a node, if we can follow the edges and reach to another vertex, then we say that there is a path. Like if I can go to this. So in this example, if we see the second example, we can say that there is a path from A to E, right? What is the path? A, B, C, and E. Following the edges starting from A, we can reach to A, B, C, E. So there is a path from A, B, C, E. We say there is a path from A to E. Further, we can say the length of this path is 3 because we traverse 3 edges to reach to E.
Yes, ma'am.
Also there is a path from A to D. What is the path?
A to B, B to D.
A to B, B to D. This is a path of length 2, right?
Yes, ma'am.
If it is possible to start from a vertex and reach to the same vertex, we call it a closed path. Is there any such path? Is there a closed path?
Yes, ma'am. A to B, B to D, D to.
A to B, B to D, and D to A. Right. So we call it a closed path. Even I think A to B, B to C, C to E, E to D, and D to A. This is also a closed path.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So if starting from some vertex, we reach to the same vertex by following the edges, we call it a closed path. And if if there is a path where there is no repeated edge, repeated vertex except the first and last, and it is a closed path, we call it a cycle or a loop. Okay. And if there is no path in where there is no parallel edge or a loop, we call it a simple path. A graph is a connected graph if the one in which some path exists between every two vertices in V. There are no isolated nodes. That's called a connected graph. Okay. There is no path. There is no two such vertices where there is no path. That means every two pair of vertices are connected and there is no isolated node. We call it a connected graph. And a complete graph is the one in which every node is connected with all other nodes. Okay? A complete graph contains n into n minus 1 by 2 edges, where n is the number of nodes in the graph. Okay. This question is generally asked in many interviews, so you should know this calculation. A complete graph contains n into n minus 1 by 2 edges, where n is the number of nodes or the vertices in the graph.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, चल रही है बेटा. Is the PPT visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The other terms connected with graph is the weighted graph. If in the weighting graph, तो बच्चे बार बार आते रहते हैं बीच में. If in a weighted graph, each if each edge is assigned with some data, like we can say that um, there are two places and the edge along tells us that the two places are connected and also tells the distance between the two places. Okay, like we say from distance from place A to B is 10 kilometers, right? So the number 10 represents the distance between the two places. We say that this is the weight attached to the graph. Similarly, we might have the cost of travel from one place to another place along the edge, like the ticket of DTC from stop A to stop B is 20 rupees. So this 20 is the weight attached with the graph. Okay. So such a graph is a weighted graph. The weight of an edge can be given as WE, which must be a positive value indicating the cost of traversing the edge. There is a problem of calculation of shortest path using the weighted graph, which gives us the cost of the So using the cost of the traveling from one place to another place, we can calculate the path cheapest path along the way, or using the distance given, we can calculate which path is the shortest path from one place to another place. Okay, so this is called the problem of shortest calculation of shortest path using the weighted graph.
Yes, ma'am.
Then we have the digraph. Digraph is the directed graph in which each edge of the graph is associated with some direction, and the traversing can be done only in the specified direction. Like we had done directed graph. Okay, if that directed graph is a weighted graph also, we call it a digraph. Right? Then we have the adjacent nodes. If two nodes U and V are connected via an edge, then the nodes U and V are called the neighbors or the adjacent nodes. Okay, if there is an edge
Yes, ma'am.
A to B, then this is an adjacent node. Then degree of the node is the number of edges that are connected with that node. A node with degree 0 is called an isolate node. Like there are certain edges which are leaving the graph or which are joining the graph. Okay. So the total of such edges are called the degree of the graph. Further, we have the in degree and the out degree. The number of edges leaving the graph is called an in degree, and number of graphs which are joining that vertex is called the out degree, and total of in degree and out degree is the degree of the graph. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Further, we have how we represent the graph. Okay, how do you store the graph? So generally, graph we can represent in three ways. Actually, it has given two. There is a third one also, but these two are more for general: the sequential representation and the linked representation. And third one is the linked list representation. Okay. In the sequential representation, what we do a adjacency matrix. Basically, we use a matrix to store the mapping represented by vertices and edges. In each in adjacent matrix, there are rows and columns, and each of the row and column is represented by a graph vertices. A graph having n vertices will have n by n dimension. If there are n vertices in the graph, then this graph will have n by n dimension. And entry m in the adjacency matrix representation of an undirected graph will be 1 if there is an edge exists between V and V. ठीक है? You can see here an example of the sequential representation. This is the undirected graph example we had. Now, if we have an edge from A to B, so here you can see this is a 5 by 5 matrix. There are 5 vertices. So this is a 5 by 5 vertex. So we say A to A, there is no loop. Okay, so this is 0. A to B, there is an edge. So this is 1. Since it is an undirected graph, there is an edge from B to A also. So this B to A is also 1. Okay? Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
A to B is 1, B to A is 1. The similar thing you can see in the directed graph. There is an edge from A to B, so this is 1. But there is no edge from B to A, so this is 0. You can note the difference.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So similarly, the other entries, all the loop entries B to B is 0. So any other entry you can check, right? So this way we can so this way you can check that you can complete the adjacency matrix for any directed or undirected graph. Okay. Now,
Yes,
if it is a weighted graph, suppose this had been a weighted graph, and along the edge A to B, it is written 10, the weight of A to B is just 10. Then, then in the adjacency matrix, instead of 1, we'll write the weight of that edge. Okay. Rest of it will remain the
yes,
same.
ma'am.
Now, this is the another kind of representation. That's the linked representation. In the linked representation, there is an adjacency list which is used to store the graph into the computer's memory. So what we do for each of the vertex, there is a list. Okay, like in this diagram, you can see that there are 5 vertices A, B, C, D, E. Then along each list, we store the edges which are linked with it. Like A is connected to B, A is connected to D. So the first list contains A, B, D. Okay. Similarly, if we see B, B is connected to B is connected to A, C, and D. So list B contains, it is connected to A, it is connected to D, it is connected to C. We can write it in any order. Like there is no hard and fast rule about this, but we should show all the nodes to which it is connected. So basically, this conveys B is connected to A, B is connected to D, and B is connected to C. Okay. If
Yes,
you
ma'am.
see E is connected to D and E is connected to C. So this is how we show the linked representation. This is the directed graph. So for directed graph, we have the list we show it connected to the other vertex, which is connected by the edge. Like A to B, there is a link. B to A, now it doesn't show. Whereas in the previous one, we had seen there was an edge from B to A, D, and C. Now there is an edge from B only to D and C. You see the difference?
Yes, ma'am.
Similarly, in case of weighted directed graph, now along this node, the weight is also written. Like we say there is an edge from A to B and the weight of this edge is 5. ठीक है? ये
Yes,
value
ma'am.
add कर दी यहाँ पे हमने. So this way we write the adjacency. So graph representation, we have seen the linked representation and the sequential representation. Okay. Similarly, there is third one. You just go through. Then we have the grass traversal algorithm. Like we had the tree traversal. Tree traversal was your pre-order, post-order, and in-order. है ना? Similar to that, we have graph traversal algorithms. There are two standard graph traversals which are followed. One is breadth first search, and the second one is depth first search. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
As the name suggests, breadth first is, in case of breadth, we go along the breadth first, and in case of depth first, we go along the depth first. You may notice that in case of a graph, there is no root as such. Like in the tree, you have a clearly defined root from where we start the traversal. But in case of graph, there is no root assigned. So we can choose any one of them as the root. Okay, so maybe in the exam, in the problem, a root is given to you that give a breadth first search traversal starting from this node. If it is not given, then you can assume any of the nodes, but clearly specify that this is the root we are assigning, we are assuming. Okay. So first we'll understand what is breadth first search, then we'll go to depth first search. Now, breadth first search is a graph traversal algorithm that starts traversing the graph from the root node and explores all the neighboring nodes. Okay. Then it selects the nearest node and explore all the unexplored nodes. All the unexplored nodes, like the ones which are not explored as yet. So once we explore a node, we mark it as visited. Okay. So that if the algorithm comes again at this node, it will check this node whether it is already visited or not. If it is already visited, then it will not visit it again. It will not explore it again and go to the next one. The algorithm explores all neighbors of all the nodes and ensures that each node is visited exactly once and no node is visited twice. So this is important in this algorithm, that even in tree traversal, we ensure that each node is done once. Okay, but here, since there is no sequencing as such, so it is possible that in the algorithm, it comes again. So it will check whether it is already visited or not. If it is already visited, then it will just ignore. So this is an example of a breadth first node. Like for this tree, it starts from Q, it starts from A, then the two neighbors B and D, then from B in the Q it has B and D, the output is B, then from B again in the Q the neighbors C and F are added, so output is C. From C in the Q goes F, E, F is already there, E and G. Okay. From G, E goes to the Q, but since it is already there, so it's simply that is output. From E, G is there in the Q. Next output is G. So it is possible that for one graph, there are many BFS traversals. There is no hard and fast that this traversal will be there. Okay, there are 2-3 traversals are possible, but the thing is that first it will do the breadth first, and then it will go to the depth. Like if I consider A, F, E, E is at the depth. So D and B, these are the ones which are considered as the breadth. So the output is B, C, E, F, E, G, A, D. Starting from A. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
In case of depth first, it starts with the initial node of the graph G and then goes to deeper and deeper until we find the goal node or the node which has no children. The data structure which is used in the algorithms for the depth first search is stack. Whereas in case of breadth first search, it was the queue. This process is the same. In DFS, the edges that leads to an unvisited node are called undiscovered edges, while the edges that leads to an already visited nodes are called the block edges. So this is the example for DFS. To show the depth, it has taken a different example. So initially it starts with H in the stack. then A is added to the stack, then D is added to the stack, then it adds F, so simultaneously it is printing this H, A, D, F, B, C, G, E. So the BFS traversal for this is E is at the depth most. E will be printed. G is printed. Then C is printed. B, etc. Okay. So basically, this is how so this is mostly about the graphs which we had to cover. There are topics like spanning tree that is not included in our syllabi this time. Shortest path, that is also not there. So the general topics which were there, I have done that. If you have any queries, you can ask. Anyone.
No, ma'am.
On which date is data structure exam? Any
And
idea?
6th December.
6th December. अच्छा अभी तो है टाइम. और एग्जाम स्टार्ट कब से हो रहे हैं? 20 से
21st.
21st से स्टार्ट है. अच्छा 20th को नहीं है एग्जाम, या आप लोगों का 20th को नहीं है?
अब हमारा नहीं है 20th.
अच्छा ठीक है. तो मेरी तरफ से तो सारी चीजें हो गई हैं कवर. सिलेबाई भी हो गया है, आपका क्विज भी हो गया है, लैब की भी फाइल वगैरह सब सबमिट हो गई हैं, वाइवा भी हो गया है. कुछ अगर आप लोगों को कोई क्वेरी है, कोई
मैम
डाउट है? हाँ
मैम एक बार आप मैम डीएस का डिटेल्ड सिलेबस भेज दीजिएगा टॉपिक वाइज.
डिटेल सिलेबस. अच्छा मैं देखती हूँ, कंपाइल करने की कोशिश करती हूँ. आई विल सेंड इट टू योर सीआर.
ओके मैम.
ठीक है, वो आपको आगे दे देंगे.
मैम चैप्टर 6 भी आ रहा है.
चैप्टर 6 कौन सा बच्चे?
मैम वो हैशिंग फंक्शंस.
हाँ हैशिंग है आपके सिलेबस में. हैशिंग है. बेसिकली आपको जनरल आइडिया होना चाहिए व्हाट इज हैशिंग, व्हाट आर वेरियस हैश फंक्शंस, और अगर कोलिशन, 2-3 चीजें हैं उसमें. बेसिकली हैशिंग वही होता है कि आप जैसे अगर स्टोर करते हो मेमोरी में, तो किस एड्रेस पे स्टोर करना है. जैसे एरे के केस में आपको इंडेक्स दिया होता है ना, आप वहां जाके स्टोर करते हो. हैशिंग के केस में आप कुछ भी फंक्शन लगा के हैशिंग फंक्शन की पे उस पे एड्रेस कैलकुलेट कर लेते हो. ठीक है, मान लो आपको 10 स्टोर करना है, 10 कहाँ पे स्टोर करना है, उस पे आप एक हैशिंग फंक्शन लगा लेते हो डिवाइड बाय 2. तो जब आप डिवाइड बाय 2 करते हो तो 5 आ जाता है, तो 5 पे आप उसको स्टोर करोगे. दैट इज नोन एज योर हैशिंग एड्रेस. ठीक है, तो वो डिफरेंट डिफरेंट हैशिंग फंक्शंस हैं, जैसे डिवाइड बाय 5 मैंने बोला, कहीं कहीं पे वो मिड स्क्वायर वैल्यू निकाल लेते हैं, कुछ मल्टीप्लाई कर लेते हैं किसी नंबर से, तो वो डिफरेंट स्टैंडर्ड हैशिंग फंक्शंस हैं, वो आप उसमें पढ़ोगे तो आपको पता चल जाएगा। और उसमें एक होता है कि जैसे मान लो आपने दो डिफरेंट वैल्यूज पे सेम हैश फंक्शन लगाया तो सेम एड्रेस आ गया है ना? तो उस केस में फिर वो कहाँ स्टोर करे, वो कोलिशन आ जाता है, तो कोलिशन रिजॉल्व करना पड़ता है। उस कोलिशन को कैसे रिजॉल्व करना है, उसकी एक तो है कि लिंक लिस्ट यूज कर लिया एक ही एड्रेस पे, मान लो 3-4 वैल्यूज आ गई, जो डिवाइड करने पे सेम 5 ही आ गया, तो 5 एड्रेस पे आप लिंक लिस्ट यूज कर लो, उसमें ऐड करते रहो नोड्स, डायनेमिक है, जितना मर्जी आएगा तो आप कर लोगे, तो वो कोलिशन रेजोल्यूशन बाय चेनिंग हो गया। ठीक है।
ओके मैम।
और कुछ? एवीएल ट्रीज करा दिया था, बी ट्रीज करा दिया था, हीप सॉर्ट करा दिया था।
यस मैम।
तो मेरे ख्याल से बाकी तो सारा सिलेबस हो गया है। चलो, ये अभी क्लास ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं। ऑल द बेस्ट फॉर योर एग्जाम्स।
Thank you, ma'am.
थैंक यू।
You can leave.
मैम एवीएल ट्री और बी ट्री के कोड तो नहीं करने ना हमें?
वो रोटेशंस करनी है एवीएल ट्री की।
और बी ट्री में?
बी ट्री में नहीं, कोड नहीं करने। और मैं सिलेबस जब लिखूंगी ना तो मैं बता दूंगी उसमें।
क्या राजा बहुत